On 5 News, Apple pay up. An £11 billion bite out of the tech giant's profit as the EU rules its tax deal with Ireland was illegal. Also, the Calais migrant camp stays in France. That's Britain's tough message after politicians in Paris said the so-called jungle should be moved to the UK. It comes as 6,000 people are rescued from the sea, attempting to make it to Europe. Conjoined at birth and now getting set for their first day at school. The amazing survival story of these twin sisters.
It's a day that I never expected to happen, at some points. I never thought this far ahead. So it's amazing that they've come this far and they've done so well, really.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination.
And remembering the man who will forever be Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder dies at the age of 83. Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Matt Barbette. It is one of the world's biggest companies, and now it's been hit with one of the biggest tax bills ever. Apple has been ordered to pay the equivalent of £11 billion after the European Commission ruled its deal with the Irish government was illegal. It effectively meant that for every £1 million in profits, Apple paid just a few thousand in tax. Today's decision raises big questions about a country's ability to set its own taxes and global corporations' efforts to avoid paying them. As Julian Drucker reports.
Regularly voted the world's most valuable, most iconic brand. Someone's about to take a big bite out of Apple. The European Commission has ruled it's been the beneficiary of illegal tax benefits. So it's been ordered to repay Ireland £11 billion.
This decision sends a clear message. Member States cannot give unfair tax benefits to selected companies, no matter if they are European or foreign, large or small, part of a group or not.
This is all about how Apple's foreign profits are routed through its headquarters in Cork. The Irish government says the maker of the iPhone and the Apple Watch paid the correct amount of tax. But now Ireland stands accused of pursuing foreign investment in an inconsistent and unfair way. Apple says this decision will be harmful to jobs that employ 6,500 people in the UK. But how did it end up in this situation? Let's ask Apple's very own virtual assistant. Siri, how much tax has Apple been paying?
Give me a moment. Here's what I found on the web for how much does Apple pay in taxes.
The standard rate of Irish corporate tax is 12.5%. The European Commission found Apple had effectively paid 1% tax on its European profits in 2003, dropping to around 0.005% in 2014. That means on every £1 million of profit, Apple was paying just £5,000 in taxes.
Well, I think the US multinationals, particularly in the tech sector, are going to be concerned because it shows a real will on the part of governments or the EU to go after arrangements they don't think are acceptable from a tax point of view. But I don't expect that the US will take this lying down.
Apple made a net profit of £45 billion in the 2015 financial year. It can afford this fine, but it objects to the finger-pointing from Europe. So it and Ireland will now appeal against this record penalty.
Julian, it is a huge amount of money. Could other companies expect to be hit with similarly large tax bills now?
Matt, Ireland is unhappy, Apple is unhappy, and America is unhappy. The US Treasury says this penalty could undermine foreign investment. Is this all about Europe versus America, though? Well, no, because recent rulings have asked Holland and other countries to go after Starbucks and for Luxembourg to go after Fiat. What next? The tax affairs of McDonald's and Amazon in Luxembourg are being looked at, and in the future, although Facebook and Google aren't being examined at the moment, they do have big bases in Ireland, so today's announcement won't have gone unnoticed.
Julian, many thanks. The Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, and her French counterpart have insisted they will not scrap the treaty that lets British officials carry out border checks on French soil. Some senior politicians in France say the deal has caused the build-up of migrant camps in Calais, known as the jungle. Instead, the two countries say they'll work even more closely together. But as our political editor Andy Bell reports from Calais, the situation there shows little signs of improving.
It's another afternoon in the jungle and someone has just been stabbed. French police tend him where he lies. Eventually an ambulance will take him away. We don't know what happened to him. You would think no one would choose to stay in a place like this, but nearly 10,000 do because they're hoping to get to the UK. People like Akbar from Afghanistan, here 7 months and still trying.
Why not stay here in France and make a life?
Yes, because this is a good country, because I have fingerprint from the Hungary and Bulgaria and Italy.
Because where you came through?
Yes, yeah. They send me back there, you know, because I don't want to go back to these countries.
This man did not want his face shown. He's from Pakistan and also didn't want to try and claim asylum in France.
The British people is good. I like the British peoples, and before I stay in 2-3 years in there, I like there. So I don't like France. I don't want to stay in France.
One French politician has suggested that people here could apply to get asylum in the UK. That's been dismissed by the Home Office, who say the rules are clear, that anyone arriving in the EU has to apply to get asylum in the first EU country they arrive at, not in one they hope to get to later.
They know here that the former Home Secretary is now the Prime Minister and that she has little interest in changing any of the current rules on controls at this border. But 10 minutes drive away in the centre of Calais, there's a consensus that this is a British problem that the French are having to manage.
Mais je pense que le contrôle devrait se faire aussi, je veux dire, en Angleterre.
I think the frontier checks should also be done in England, says this woman. It's not normal that everyone is blocked over here on this side.
Disons, avec votre sortie de l'Europe, le Brexit.
Now Britain has voted for Brexit, says this man. It's time for you to take responsibility and for you to sort out these immigrants, but on your territory. This is a vital crossing point between Britain and France, but right now, on one side of the channel, they feel they are the ones carrying all the load.
Andy, Amber Rudd taking a pretty firm line in her new job as Home Secretary. The jungle will not be moving to Britain.
That's right. After that first meeting between Amber Rudd and the Home Secretary and her French opposite number in Paris, we had a joint statement dealing partly with Calais. In it, they referred to ever closer cooperation, the amount of money, something like 100 million euros, about 90 million pounds, that the British government has given to ensure that there's extra fencing, for instance, to secure areas around the Channel Tunnel. But what was significant from that joint statement was there was absolutely no suggestion that the current arrangements would change, whether it's on how you might apply for asylum in the UK or on the case of British immigration controls being on the French side of the channel. Absolutely no suggestion any of that's going to change because this current French government is basically happy with it. But it's clear to us here today, talking to people in Calais, there is pressure building, and in the context of a French presidential election next year, it could get harder and harder for Britain to hold that line.
Thanks a lot, Andy. Well, as the politicians discuss how to tackle that crisis in Calais, extraordinary new footage shows the desperation of those still trying to come to Europe. In one of the biggest operations of its kind, Coast Guards rescued more than 6,500 people in the Mediterranean. Among them were many young children, as Warren Nettleford reports.
Swimming to safety and then dragged on board. Just one of the many moments of migrants desperate for a better life, attempting to reach Europe by sea. These mothers with babies just days old are taking unimaginable risks for the sake of better lives for their families. Rescuers from a coalition of charities aided more than 6,000 migrants from more than 40 boats off the coast of Libya. Just over 270,000 migrants have arrived in Europe in 2016. Numbers are down on last year, when more than 1 million arrived. But despite fewer numbers of refugees making it to Europe, more than 3,000 migrants have died making their way to the continent this year.
We need to address brutal regimes in Eritrea and Sudan and elsewhere. In the short term, we have to understand that without safe and legal routes, people will continue to flee, and we will only continue to fuel these smuggling operations which cause such tragedy and trauma.
More than 500 migrants were rammed onto this small boat. When they started their journey in Libya, they didn't have life jackets. They embarked on their journey from a country with a booming people smuggling trade, but one devoid of hope. It's believed 275,000 people are currently waiting in Libya to travel to Europe. This is the sound of desperation. The experts say the boats will keep coming. Warren Nettleford, 5 News.
A British man who was critically injured trying to save a young backpacker from a knife attack in Australia has now died. Thomas Jackson was stabbed as he tried to protect Mia Eilif Chung at a hostel in Queensland last week. She also was killed in the attack. Police say a man is being charged with both murders. And the chief executive of Southern NHS Trust has resigned after it was hit by a series of scandals. Katrina Percy says media attention has made her position untenable. The Trust had faced criticism over the way it investigated the deaths of hundreds of patients in its care. Still to come on the programme.
Under the right circumstances, a producer could make more money with a flop than he could with a hit.
A comic genius. The world's greatest comedians pay tribute to the late Gene Wilder.
Well, it's simply a matter of creative...
And ever seen a motorway services with grub like this? The Pit Stop Cafe that's made it into the Good Food Guide. More on that after the break. Welcome back to 5 News. Nearly a third of people who have a heart attack are given a wrong diagnosis, often with severe repercussions for their health. A study has also found that women are far more likely than men to be misdiagnosed. Our health correspondent Catherine Jones has more now.
The main thing I felt was not being able to breathe, and it scared the hell out of me.
When Sarah Walsh suddenly fell ill, the symptoms she described to the paramedic who came to help initially led him to diagnose a panic attack.
What I hadn't told him was previously I'd been having chest pains, but I put it down to indigestion from a curry that I'd had a few days earlier. I didn't connect my not being able to breathe with the chest pains I'd been having in the days leading up to it.
Thankfully, the paramedic and Sarah's husband Keith were still with her when her condition dramatically worsened.
I then went into cardiac arrest, and that was when my poor husband had to step in to help resuscitate me.
That must have been the scariest moment of your life.
I cried like a baby while I was doing it, but he just told me to just do this, so I did it. He saved her life.
Sarah was lucky her heart attack was recognised, as new research has found 30% of all heart attack victims are incorrectly diagnosed to begin with women 50% more likely to be misdiagnosed initially. This has serious consequences, making somebody 70% more likely to die.
They expect that it should be desperately dramatic, as it often is on television, with somebody clutching their chest and dropping to the ground, and that's not the case in most heart attacks. Anybody, whether it be a man or a woman, who gets unusual symptoms in or around their chest, particularly feels sweaty and nauseous and short of breath, should think it could be a heart attack, and they should call 999 immediately.
Symptoms to look out for include a pressure in the chest or a pain that travels from the chest to the arms, jaw or back, plus feeling dizzy, sweaty, breathless, sick or having an overwhelming anxiety. All warning signs that Sarah is now fully aware of.
I'm just so thankful of what happened and that I lived to tell the tale.
As today's research makes clear, surviving a heart attack depends greatly on recognising it's happened. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
A comic genius, a truly great talent, and one of the nicest actors you could meet. News of the death of Gene Wilder at the age of 83 has brought back so many fond memories for so many people today. As Simon Viger reports, his roles in Blazing Saddles, The Producers and Young Frankenstein were all admired and adored. And then, of course, there was that role.
You're going to love this. Just love it.
Many, many people will only know Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka, the Willy Wonka. He was just right, although Roald Dahl took some convincing. But Gene Wilder was so much more than the enchanting man who ran the enchanted chocolate factory.
But under the right circumstances, a producer could make more money with a flop than he could with a hit.
His comic talent shone through in The Producers. It was the beginning of a long partnership with the director Mel Brooks. Its high watermark came in 1974.
Look at that. Steady as a rock. Yeah, but I shoot with this hand.
The comedy western Blazing Saddles ensures you can never look at a proper western the same way again.
Alive! It's alive!
While Young Frankenstein does the same for horror. Mel Brooks has tweeted, "Gene Wilder, one of the truly great talents of our time. He blessed every film we did with his magic, and he blessed me with his friendship."
I've got a perfect puzzle for you.
And one of the British Oompa Loompas has happy memories.
Willy Wonka was my first ever movie. And when I first met Gene, he was a gentleman. He was absolutely lovely. He was fantastic. He was like a father, stepfather to the five kids because they were away from their parents.
Gene Wilder was also known for his double act with Richard Pryor. And although he was a comic actor, he said he disappointed fans who expected to meet a comedian.
What a comic, what a funny guy, all that stuff, and I'm not. I'm really not, except in a comedy, in films.
Living there.
His legacy is forever. Gene Wilder called the remake of this film an insult, but he needn't have worried. For most people, he will always be the Willy Wonka.
One of the great films and one of the great actors as well, Simon Viger, on the career of Gene Wilder. Now, if you've ever stopped for something to eat at a motorway service station, you know what to expect, don't you? Overpriced, unappealing, often inedible food. Well, if you drive along the M5 now, you might find something a little bit different. Minnie Stevenson took a look.
From artisan cakes to Michelin star-style meringues, fine dining, which has been recognised by some of the most discerning food critics in the land. And guess what? We are talking about a service station. Yes, really. For the first time since the 60s, the Good Food Guide has listed a motorway spot as destination dining. Welcome to Gloucester Services. Could it have been the surrounding view of the M5 between Junction 11A and Junction 12 which really charmed them?
This is definitely a first for me. I don't think I've been to a service station quite like it. I would say it's more Master Chef than Little Chef. And on the motorway menu, you can get yourself a basil and courgette frittata, or if you wanted a wild garlic with cheese croissant, or possibly a gluten-free brownie. And to think that I was going to stop off at a petrol station and just get a BLT. How bleak would that have been?
And this service station even has its own head chef.
I'm going to dive in and try this. What have we got here?
So we've got a wrap which is topped with goat's cheese and mushrooms with wild garlic.
Delicious. Really nice.
Glad you like it.
What are people's reaction when they walk in here? I'm guessing they don't really expect to see all this.
So no, they don't. They expect to see your usual fast food establishments and outlets, but that's not what we're about. We're about locally sourced produce.
If you pit stop here, you'll find butchers on site and a fishmonger, just what you need after a long motorway journey. With some waterside views, we had to ask our fine diners whether they'd be having a drive-through dinner again.
You mind the sound of the motorway that I can sort of hear dimly in the...
I think you can sort of half cancel it out just by looking at the scenery around you.
This is by far the best service station on the M5, so I come here as often as I can, really.
He takes you to the best places, doesn't he?
No, this is our first time. We're heading down on holiday. So, yeah.
Do you think you'll be coming back?
Who needs a Michelin star when you've got the motorway? Minnie Stevenson, 5 News at Gloucester Services.
Not too bad. Finally, when 2 4-year-old twins, Rosie and Ruby Formosa, start school next month, their parents will be filled with pride, and for very good reason. They were born conjoined, and doctors feared they wouldn't survive at all, let alone the operation to separate them. Now they're very excited about their first day, and don't they look it? Danny Sinha has more.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Just 4 years old, these amazing little girls survived against the odds. Born with a rare medical condition, Ruby and Rosie Formosa were joined at the abdomen and shared part of an intestine. But now they're sharing another milestone as they prepare to start school, joining their big sister Lily.
I'm really excited to go to school.
Their mother Angela thought she'd never see this day, now thriving. But 4 years ago, they had emergency surgery to separate them the day after they were born. Doctors had originally planned to operate on them when they were a couple of months old. But an intestinal blockage made it an emergency.
It was a really scary time and everything was unknown. So we just didn't know what was going to happen. It was just all unknown. Everything was up in the air. It was really scary.
These little tots spent 5 hours in the operating theatre, which allowed them to live separately. But it was touch and go as the surgery carried huge risks. But now look at them.
It's come around so fast, and it was a day that I never expected to happen, at some points. I never thought this far ahead. So it's amazing that they've come this far, and they've done so well, really.
It's likely the twins will need more treatment in the future. It's been an amazing journey for them so far, and they can barely contain their excitement as they prepare to start school. Danny Sinha, 5 News.
Brilliant stuff. That's it for now. I'll see you again in an hour with 5 News tonight. Charlotte Welby has the weather next. Bye-bye for now.